Welcome back to today's Explainer. Today we're tackling a totally universal frustration. I mean, we've all been there, right? Why is it that some of us seem perpetually stuck in the mud while others just effortlessly pull ahead? Well, we're going to break down a really powerful narrative that exposes the ultimate trap of procrastination, and more importantly, it reveals the absolute true value of time.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked around and felt like your friends are just sprinting ahead while you're somehow falling behind? This was the harsh, everyday reality for a young student named Gaurav. Living in a small town, he found himself constantly failing while his peers just breezed forward. He really wanted to be the best, but instead, he was firmly stuck right at the back of the pack.
So, let's dive into Section 1, Gaurav's real problem.
Okay, so despite moving to the city for a much better education, Gaurav's own daily habits were completely sabotaging him. Instead of actually studying, he spent his time chasing cheap dopamine. You know the drill, partying with friends and endlessly scrolling through reels on his phone. His family constantly warned him that lost time never returns, but he just brushed them off with that classic everyday procrastinator's lie. Oh, I have plenty of time. And the direct result of all this? Failing grades, peers pulling way ahead, and just constant, overwhelming frustration.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the old man's wisdom.
Feeling totally desperate and stuck, Gaurav actually sought out this highly respected, wise old man who was meditating in town. He confessed all of his failures to him. And the old man? Well, he didn't sugarcoat it. He immediately diagnosed the core issue with this sharp realization saying, "You are struggling because you constantly delay your tasks and do not value time." It was a simple yet brutally accurate exposure of his chronic procrastination.
Let's move on to Section 3, the King's Golden Opportunity. To really hammer this point home, the old man shared a parable about a profoundly lazy peasant. Now, this guy was totally broke, completely unemployed, and commanded basically zero respect. But his real failing wasn't just being poor, it was a complete lack of accountability. Rather than acknowledging his own terrible work ethic, he constantly blamed society. He played the victim perfectly, always claiming that the outside world just completely rejected him.
And this story illustrates exactly what happens when a lifetime of excuses meets an undeniable opportunity. The king actually took pity on the guy and offered him a literal royal deal. He told the peasant he could go to the palace and take as much gold and silver as he could physically carry, the whole shebang. But there was a catch. He absolutely had to arrive before sunset.
All right, let's see how he handles this in Section 4, the wasting of time.
Okay, so the peasant had just been handed the greatest opportunity of his entire life on a silver platter. You'd think he'd sprint there, right? Nope. His complete lack of discipline just took over. First, he actually delays leaving just so he can eat his lunch slowly, figuring, he's got plenty of time. Then, feeling a bit full, he rationalizes taking a short nap, which totally drags into 2 full hours. When he finally hits the road, the hot sun tires him out. So what does he do? He decides to rest under a tree to enjoy the breeze and falls asleep again, this time for 4 critical hours.
And boom! By the time he panics and finally snaps awake, it was already evening. He sprints toward the palace, but the sun had fully set. The massive palace doors were locked shut. His one chance at unimaginable wealth was just gone forever. And why? Simply because he completely disrespected the value of time.
Let's pivot back to our student in Section 5, Gaurav's epic transformation.
So, the old man's story hit Gaurav like a ton of bricks. He was left completely speechless. He instantly realized that the peasant's foolish excuses were exactly like his own modern-day distractions. But here is where Gaurav diverges from the peasant. He practiced extreme accountability. He stopped making excuses, completely dropped his phone and his procrastination that very same day, and totally transformed his daily habits. By focusing intensely on his goals, he became so productive that he rapidly surpassed all those peers he used to envy and was eventually named the top student in his entire college.
Which leads us to our final takeaway in Section 6, the true value of time. This all brings us to a huge, universal truth. Time is the single most precious asset a person actually owns. Honestly, it's far more valuable than any king's gold. If you waste this asset on low-value, useless distractions like aimlessly scrolling or making up excuses, it leaves absolutely nothing behind but permanent regret.
Opportunities literally have to be seized at the exact right moment because of an absolute, unbreakable rule of reality. Lost time never, ever comes back.
Actually, think about it. Once that sun sets, the doors close. You can't buy it back, and there is no way to ask for an extension.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to ask yourself right now, the sun is setting on your day-to-day. What will you do with the time you have left? Are you going to refuse accountability and keep making excuses like the peasant? Or are you going to do exactly what Gaurav did? Take ownership, close the screen, and get to work on your goals. The choice and the time is completely yours.